not gonna give in. I'm not playing a mess. I'm not scared around you. You can't keep stepping on me. Happy and free, powerful positivity. Say what you believe in. Try fighting uphill with me. Avoid the dangers of conformity. A lot of us with no action. Destroy this corporate thing.
How's it going? Earlier, but that shouldn't have made that happen. I don't care. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
What now?
I think we might be able to hear me. That looks good. Let me know if you guys can hear me in the chat. Somebody says, hi, Andy. Now I have a puppy in here. There's probably a cat around here somewhere, too. Good save, Andy. Yes, Andy quickly came in and fixed it. Here is tech support for the tech support. Yay! Yes, here's Dot. She's so cute. I just washed her. She's still a little bit wet. She's thebomb.com. Here's the cat. He's gotten used to having Dot around. She's going to help me do the podcast. She likes to sit on my shoulder. She actually really likes to climb up my front. It's working. We're good.
Just wondering why the other one's not working.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. We'll have to troubleshoot it after we're done here. I'm going to have to give this little mountain goat back to you. Thank you, dear. You want to take the cat too? Yeah, there's just a zoo in here. There's a lot going on over here. Thank you guys for joining me. I was just rambling about smishing because I had gotten a text message from a phone number I didn't recognize, and they said to be warned about scams like smishing, phishing, and stuff like that. And I was like, what is smishing? Oh, it's SMS stuff. That's where they basically send you text messages convincing you to give them very personal information. So it's not good. Be on guard against that all the time. It can happen to the best of us, and you always have to be paying attention. So tonight, it's a Friday night, so we're just going to roll with it. We're going to see what happens. I, too, put my wife on mute sometimes. I wasn't on mute. I had the wrong microphone hooked up, I guess, so it's nonsense. Yes, she is a mountain goat puppy. She likes to climb up us. She likes to sit like on Andy's, the back of his neck, like a little neck warmer. She thinks she's a scarf. She's really quite adorable. If you guys want to see her and Dip's adventures, they're over at The Lighter Dips on Instagram, TheLeiterDips. That's it for sure. You guys should go over and check them out. I'm taking cute pictures of them constantly, and I put them on that account so I don't spam everybody who follows me on my regular meme Instagram. So now for what we've all been wanting to talk about, and that is the Chinese balloon hovering over mid-America. Oh, boy. Oh, is it because I switched scenes?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, why is this happening?
Sorry.
Thanks, dear. Oh my gosh. Together. Andy, will you go check it and make sure you can hear it?
Yeah.
Thank you, dear. I heard like this really big bang outside and then Andy's running feet. He's having a heyday over there, having to keep up with me. I'm not being censored. It's fine. It's just me being relatively incompetent. I unplugged my laptop and treated it like a laptop and moved around with it. And apparently that's not something that I can do. So, oh my gosh, irritating. Anyway, as you guys saw from the headline, there's a Senate Democrat who's joining the GOP in thumping Biden over Chinese balloon response. I don't know if you guys have been following this story, but I guess somebody asked President Biden about this ridiculous Chinese spy balloon that's just hanging out up above the US, and Biden was like, I don't really have a comment on that, which unbelievable, actually unbelievable that the president of the US simply has no comment on an actual spy balloon from an actual, a foreign power hovering out in our own airspace. Insanity. A Montana Democrat is joining Republican lawmakers in demanding answers after a suspected Chinese spy balloon was revealed to be flying over the western U.S. and are calling into question the Biden administration's response to the violation of U.S. airspace. Lawmakers expressed outrage over the balloon, revealed Thursday to be hovering over Montana, and called for briefings from senior Biden administration officials. Guys, do you know what's in Montana? I know that some of you guys will. I'm gonna wait for a second until I come to that, and we're gonna read $5 toward a new microphone. Thank you, Planet Fatness. It's not the microphone's fault. I think it's just the fact that I unplugged my computer and was using it like a normal person uses a laptop, unfortunately. Thank you, though. I appreciate that. Sorenko says, and he's supposed to be our commander-in-chief for sure. Do you guys know what's in Montana? I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to think about it. Montana Democratic Senator John Tester, who chairs the Senate panel that controls the Pentagon budget, delivered a broadside on the incursion into his state's airspace and said he'll receive a classified briefing on the incident when he returns to Washington. This provocation is completely unacceptable, and I am in close contact with the Department of Defense and intelligence officials, he said in a statement Friday morning. We are still waiting for real answers on how this happened and what steps the administration took to protect our country. I will hold everyone accountable until I get them. Following the news of the balloon sighting Thursday, Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who is part of the Gang of 8 group congressional leaders that reviews the country's most sensitive intelligence info, called for an intelligence briefing. China's brazen disregard for U.S. sovereignty is a destabilizing action that must be addressed, and President Biden cannot be silent, McCarthy tweeted. I am requesting a Gang of 8 briefing. Good for him. The Gang of 8 staff received a classified briefing on the incident on Thursday, according to 3 people familiar with the matter who asked for anonymity in order to disclose sensitive matters. Diplomatic fallout from the incident was swift. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, postponed a high-profile trip to Beijing, slated for next week, the State Department said Friday morning. Tester wasn't alone among Democrats condemning the incursion. I hear a puppy barking over there. I hope you guys can't hear it. Rep. Raja, last name I cannot pronounce, Democrat of Illinois, joined Representative Mike Gallagher, Representative of Wisconsin, Republican of Wisconsin, in a warning the incident shows Beijing poses risks on the home front. Of course they do, and we know this. And people all over my Twitter are commenting, rightly so, that there's no reason to be upset about a balloon in our airspace if we're not concerned about an app on our phones. I understand. An app on our phones is something we do voluntarily that we actually do have control over, that we can kind of figure out if we want to keep it. A balloon in our airspace is different. This is definitely something that should be handled summarily, probably by a military presence, but for whatever reason, we're just not doing it. Somebody says mountains. Mountains are in Montana. That's correct. Somebody says empty lands. Andy says, I think you plugged the mic back into a different port than it was in before. There's only 2 and they're identical, so I'm not sure. Somebody got it right. Planet Fatness says missile silos. And I don't think they're missile silos, but they are in fact nuclear missiles. I believe the Patriot missiles, I think that's what they're called, Minuteman missiles, are housed there. There's a lot of nuclear activity up in Montana. It's not cool. Sorenko says OBS also freaks out if you mess with inputs. Yeah, I noticed that. I have to make sure I test it whenever I come back in. I ran out of time this evening. I was making cookies. I was bathing the dog. I was cleaning up all sorts of stuff. I was very busy this evening and kind of missed my time. I forgot that my laptop wasn't in here. I took it out so we could do other stuff with it. It's possible it's sending out a cell signal being picked up by free Wi-Fi and embedding and hiding. Yeah, that's a good point too. One of the things that American authorities said when this first first happened was that they were taking measures to prevent them from accessing private information, which just blows my mind. So they're not actually going to take the balloon out of the sky. They're just going to try and make sure that they're not circumventing security systems for digital stuff. And it's nonsense. Let's continue on. The Chinese Communist Party should not have on-demand access to American airspace, Gallagher argued in a joint statement Thursday night with this other lady whose name I can't pronounce. Krishnamurthy. There you go. Krishnamurthy and Gallagher. Indeed, this incident demonstrates that the CCP threat is not confined to distant shores. It is here at home, and we must act to counter this threat. Beijing on Friday confirmed one of its balloons entered U.S. airspace, but said it's a civilian airship collecting weather data. Politico says collective weather data, but I'm pretty sure they mean collecting weather data because that would be the verb. Pentagon spokesperson Brigadier General Patrick Ryder on Friday pushed back on the Chinese statement. We are aware of the PRC statement, People's Republic of China. However, the fact is we know that it's a surveillance balloon. We do know that the balloon has violated U.S. airspace and international law, which is unacceptable. And so we've conveyed this directly to the PRC at multiple levels. Good. The maneuverable balloon is moving eastward, and is currently over the central U.S., Ryder said. Last I heard it was actually over Missouri, and then I heard that it was over Kansas. It's flying at an altitude of about 60,000 feet and could stay aloft for a few more days. Now, from my understanding, they also knew about it a couple days before it came out on Thursday. So it sounds like they pretty much knew about it as soon as it started to come over the U.S., down from over near Alaska. I think I might have retweeted a tweet showing a map of the actual incident. I can't see it now. I can only see the statement from pilots saying that the Chinese spy balloon is floating a few thousand feet above them. So yeah, I guess planes float about, or I guess this balloon is floating at about 50,000 feet and planes tend to fly at about 60,000 or something like that. Oh my goodness. Nonsense. Another DoD official on Friday said the military had estimated the shooting down of the balloon would create a debris field 20 miles by 20 miles. So why didn't we get it when it was over Alaska or another similarly unpopulated area? In fact, Montana is actually a really good place to do this because, as somebody mentioned in the comments, there are a lot of empty lands up there. I've been up there as well. It's awesome. It's true. Fear Me It's Bree says, hi guys, took you guys advice from weeks of talking with you guys through your show chat and finally put out an episode on my channel. Thanks for being encouraging to us all, Lydia and Andy. Great, I'm so happy we could help you with that, Bree. That's awesome. I'm really glad to see ladies getting into the fight because there's very important work to be done by women in this society, and a lot of us are failing at it because we're so agreeable, but good for you. I'll have to check out your video. A senior Defense Department official told reporters Thursday that the U.S. prepared fighter jets in case of a decision to shoot down the balloon, but senior Pentagon leaders opted against it due to fears of falling debris hurting people on the ground. Another DoD official on Friday said the military had estimated the shooting down of the balloons would create a debris 20 by 20 miles. Last thing we wanted was for something the size of a school bus to go through the roof of a preschool, the official said. Okay, I'm curious how big this balloon is because I don't think it's all that big. I think it's about the size of a weather balloon. In fact, let's see if we can investigate that because I actually am really curious. How big is there we go. That's a question. How big is a Chinese spy balloon? Chinese spy balloon, or officials will not say how large the balloon is, but the military sent several F-22s into the skies of Montana to get an estimate. It is sizable, according to the defense official. On Thursday, ABC News reported that the official had described the balloon as the size of 3 buses. Interesting. Okay, well, that's pretty big. I understand. So like a 20 by 20 mile radius thing, that's a pretty big deal. You'd have to really take steps to make sure that nobody was out there. Oy. Beijing said it regrets that one of its balloons violated U.S. sovereign airspace, causing the Air Force to scramble fighter jets. The foreign ministry claimed the balloon had strayed from its original course due to winds that affected its steering capabilities. The Chinese side regrets the unintended entry of the airship into the U.S. airspace due to force majeure, the ministry said, using a term for an event beyond the control of a country. Sure. The Chinese side will continue communicating with the U.S. side and properly handle this unexpected situation caused by force majeure. Yeah, right, whatever. That's basically an act of God, which is what the Chinese Communist Party is going to refer to anything that is actually an act of God, because they don't believe in any kind of religion like that, because communism is the only religion over there. Earlier this week, the balloon was spotted over Montana, including over Malmstrom Air Force Base, which houses ground-launched intercontinental ballistic missiles. That's so weird that this balloon was over that Air Force Base. That's crazy. Oh my gosh. China, how could we have been so silly? What were we thinking? We didn't mean anything by this. Oh, whoopsie. What's that? It ended up over the Air Force Base that literally launches intercontinental ballistic missiles. That's so crazy. So weird. What a coincidence, right? Given the increased hostility and destabilization around the globe aimed at the United States and our allies, I'm alarmed by the fact that this spy balloon was able to infiltrate the airspace of our country and Montana. Yeah, absolutely. They're all there all the time. He said, I don't want the American people to think this is something new and that all of a sudden we have a concern that we didn't have before. Those concerns are there. So he's pointing out that we have low orbit Chinese satellites have flown over the U.S. for years. These concerns are there. They have to be mitigated. They have to be addressed. We have to confront the Chinese government. I doubt that's likely to happen with Biden at the helm. You guys can let me know if you disagree. I don't think that Joe Biden is going to come to terms with the people who are saving off 10% for the big guy. Very unlikely that he's willing to compromise that. So speaking of the big guy, let's move on to the little guy, which is Hunter Biden, who is taking an interesting new legal strategy when it comes to his laptop shenanigans. So you guys know that he's facing some actual trouble over his laptop since Republicans are now in control of House. I believe it's just the House they're in control of. Hunter Biden was served a defamation lawsuit by the computer repair shop owner. That would be the owner of the computer repair shop where he dropped his laptop and left it for months and months on end, days before his lawyer called for criminal probe. So they're going on the offense, which is really kind of interesting. Let's read what they're doing here. Hunter Biden was served with a defamation lawsuit by John Paul MacIsaac last week, 5 days before the disgraced first son sought his own legal action against the former computer repair shop owner who came into possession of the infamous laptop from hell. Let's open that one up as well because I'm curious what their case is there. A private investigator hired by MacIsaac tracked down Hunter in Culver City, California on January 27th to serve him with the lawsuit, which seeks damages of $1.5 million for the president's son. It was very difficult to find where he was, MacIsaac's lawyer Brian Della Rocca told Fox News host Tucker Carlson on Thursday about attempts to smoke out Hunter Biden. You know, he was in D.C. for a couple weeks and he was moving around. Well, we finally tracked him down and we were able to serve him last week. And now all of a sudden we see this, Della Rocca added, referencing letters sent out by Hunter Biden's lawyer on Wednesday, pleading for a criminal probe into MacIsaac and others who disseminated the contents of the infamous laptop. MacIsaac and his lawyer alleged that the Hunter instructed his lawyer, Abby Lowell, to seek a criminal investigation as payback. 100%. Like, what possible motivation could he have for this? Absolutely nonsense. He's trying to intimidate, and it's interesting to me that this happened when it did, Della Rocca told Carlson. MacIsaac's lawsuit alleges that Hunter left the store owner to twist in the wind for years while variously and falsely insisting that the laptop was not his, that it had been stolen, or that his information had been hacked. Della Rocca insists that MacIsaac became the legal owner of the laptop after Hunter Biden dropped it off to be repaired in April 2019 but failed to return to reclaim it despite attempts by his MacIsaac to contact him. There could be a laptop out there that was stolen from me, Hunter Biden told CBS News in April 2021. It could be that I was hacked. It could be that it was a Russian intelligence. It could be that it was stolen from me. So this is MacIsaac. You know him because he wears his funky Scottish hat. As a direct and proximate result of the defamatory statements by Hunter, MacIsaac has suffered and continues to suffer substantial damages, including the loss of his business, the suit reads. Hunter had actual knowledge of the falsity of the claims and understood the high probability that injury or damage would result to MacIsaac, and despite such knowledge, made the false and defamatory statement and has issued no apology to MacIsaac, such as would repair that damage. Lowell accused McIsaac, who owned the Mac shop in Wilmington, Delaware, of unlawfully accessing the now 52-year-old's personal data, a de facto admission that the laptop belonged to Hunter Biden after years of denials and hedging. So that's something really valuable coming out of this, is that they are admitting that it was in fact Hunter Biden's laptop, and they're trying to have it both ways with this case, trying to prove that it wasn't his, but meanwhile they're also trying to say that the owner of the store is criminally liable for accessing personal information, aka getting into Hunter's stuff, when they were initially denying that it was his at all. And you really can't have it both ways. You kind of have to pick one, honestly. But I don't trust them to be consistent. I think that they're just going to lie about everything the whole time because they're lawyers after all. Lowell's targets for prosecution included McIsaac, former President Donald Trump's personal lawyer Rudy Giuliani, and Giuliani's personal lawyer Robert Costello, all of whom Lowell accuses of attempting to weaponize sordid and incriminating contents on the laptop against Joe Biden. I don't think it's against Joe Biden. I think it's 100% against Hunter, and perhaps by parallel Joe Biden, because we know for a fact there are several things we know about Joe and Hunter Biden. They shared a bank account. They shared a cell phone. Hunter Biden called his dad terribly insulting terms. He got into arguments with his his stepmother, Jill Biden. Hunter Biden took advantage of his employees. He forced them to do sexual things in return for monetary favors. He was hooked to all sorts of ridiculously illegal substances. He was in possession of an illegally owned handgun. He had an affair with he took up with his brother's widow and also her sister, and then further with a stripper whom he impregnated. And now that he has a daughter with this stripper, he is refusing to allow his daughter to acquire his last name, and the family refuses to admit that she even exists, which is absolute nonsense and sheer evil as far as I'm concerned. Hunter Biden is going to be painted as a poor, sympathetic figure by the media, and I am here to tell you that he is not. He is actively a bad person. And I have a small modicum of sympathy for people who are addicted to drugs like that, because that's a tough road to hoe and it can be hard to deal with the physiological effects of that. For example, he looks terribly aged. I don't know if you guys have ever seen pictures of his teeth, but he was full in on the whole drugs thing. And I am sympathetic on that count, but he is just an awful person who was extorting his employees. He was using the fact that he was employing them to take advantage of them and just commit every conceivable kind of disgusting act. So I really don't have any sympathy for him. I really hope he loses this case. Let's see what this is, though. Hunter Biden begs friend's dad, Joe's employees, to get him off the hook. Hunter Biden has friends in high places. We know this. This is probably the source of many of his troubles. Two Delaware prosecutors, whom the first son's lawyer called upon to probe Hunter's infamous laptop, have deep ties to the Biden family, while a top DOJ official who received a similar demand is a veteran of the Obama administration and a liberal think tank, and an analysis by the Post has shown. In other developments in the laptop story, Hunter Biden attorney Abby Lowell tried to walk back his prior admission that the laptop did indeed belong to his client. I don't know if it's Abby or Ab. It's ABBE. I'm not sure if it's male or female. Sounds like a female or a male. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy dismissed the first son's investigation demand as a delaying tactic and vowed lawmakers would get to the bottom of the computer's secrets. An attorney for repair shop owner John Paul McIsaac slammed Hunter Biden as desperate and trying to blame everyone else for his own actions. Indeed, this is part of the reason that I think he's a very bad person. Here is one of his infamous pictures. I'm grateful that this one is relatively decent. Some of those pictures were disgusting. I have not walked through the entire contents of the laptop from hell. They're truly unsettling and upsetting, including pictures of him with girls who could ostensibly be underaged. There's that picture of him in his dad's green Corvette that was featured in that ad and that was later found. Oh my gosh, this feels like we're living in some kind of crime novel. This green Corvette was in the president's commercial and was later stored in the garage with these confidential documents or classified documents. Hunter Biden was driving his two nieces around who were like 12 and 13 in various states of undress, like very skimpy swimsuits. Really unsettling stuff. First State Attorney General Kathy Jennings was among those urged to look into people connected with the laptop, including McIsaac and former President Donald Trump's one-time attorney Rudy Giuliani. Jennings, a Democrat who was elected state AG in 2018, was tapped in 2011 by then Delaware Attorney General Beau Biden, Hunter's late brother, to serve as a prosecutor in the State Department of Justice. I didn't realize that Beau Biden had been Delaware's Attorney General. Did you guys know that? Interesting. In 2019, despite the misgivings of many Democrats about a Biden 2020 presidential run, Jennings jumped on board the day the former vice president announced he would seek the White House. I've known Joe, Jill, and the Biden family for most of my life. Jennings wrote in a gushing Facebook post, Joe is one of the kindest and most genuine people I've ever known. I'm choosing Joe because nobody understands more what it means to heal. And right now, that's what America needs. Yeah, we've really seen a good dose of Biden healing over the last couple of years. We're going to be recovering from that trauma for a really long time. Even closer to the Biden family is Jennings' chief deputy, Alexander Mackler, who served as Joe Biden's press secretary in his final months as a U.S. Senator, managing Beau's successful re-election campaign for state attorney general in 2010, and served as the elder Biden's deputy counsel during his time as Barack Obama's vice president. Mackler's name also appears frequently in Hunter Biden's laptop. I just finished a hellacious couple months in court, Mackler wrote Hunter on October 16, 2018, in a message with the subject line, Hey. Now that I have a chance to breathe, was wondering how life is on your end, Mackler went on. Last you told me you were out in LA. Give me a call sometime, we can catch up. Love you, brother. In Mackler's last message to Hunter from February 3rd, 2019, he wished his friend a happy birthday and added, Lost track of time down here. Hope you're okay. Call sometime. Oh gosh, does that mean today's Hunter Biden's birthday? Gross. Jennings' office didn't respond to the post on Thursday when asked if she would recuse herself from any of the potential investigations, given her personal and professional ties to the Bidens. She clearly should. That's such a clear conflict of interest. Meanwhile, another letter from Lowell was addressed to the Justice Department's top national security office, Matthew Olson, who held several sensitive legal positions in the Obama-Biden administration, including general counsel of the National Security Agency and director of the National Counterterrorism Center, before leaving government in 2014. While in the private sector, Olson was a fellow at two left-leaning think tanks, the Center for New American Security and the Center for American Progress, and wrote a number of op-eds critical of Trump and his administration. One of those op-eds, published by Time during the 2016 election campaign, bore the provocative title, Why ISIS Supports Donald Trump. This is Ab Lowell. Okay, so it's a guy. When Biden nominated Olson to head the DOJ's National Security Division in May 2023, many Republican senators saw him as damaged goods. Although I appreciate Mr. Olson's prior public service, he no longer has the credibility necessary to fill this important role given the partisan nature of his post-government writings, Senator Marco Rubio said at the time. Sorry, I have a little bit of dot hair on my lip. A little fur. Institutions are only as good as the American public's confidence in them, and Mr. Olson would further undermine public confidence in America's national security institutions. Olson was ultimately confirmed on a near party line vote of 53 to 45. A DOJ spokesperson declined to comment Thursday when asked if Olson would play a role in any possible Hunter Biden laptop probe. Hunter Biden's lawyer has appealed for criminal investigation into those who exposed his laptop from two people with a long, friendly history with the Bidens. So there's Kathy Jennings, and here's Matthew Olson. Okay, so it's a little bit of backstory in that instance. Kind of troubling. And here Fox News is talking about how Hunter Biden's lawyers have denied admitting the laptop's existence as they're demanding a criminal probe into the leakers. So it's really just kind of more of the same. I honestly find it very interesting because it reads to me a little bit like, kind of like a John Grisham novel. It reminds me a little bit of a slightly less violent Jonathan Kellerman book. I don't know if you guys have ever read his stuff. It's pretty much ubiquitous anywhere you can find like paperback novels, like in a waiting room at the doctor's office or whatever. But let's see what you guys are saying. All right. And he says it's the diameter of 3 school buses. That's correct. That's what it said. It's huge, Lydia. Yep, 3 buses. 5 years ago, I was in Billings, Montana, making a delivery to Best Buy. Montana is beautiful. I love the Bitterroots. I had a family up there for a little while. It's a really nice place to be. A lot of mosquitoes, and it gets very cold in the winter, but it's all good. Let's see here. I feel like it's definitely big, but they've shot down bigger, right? I'm not sure. Nice of the CCP to pretend to acknowledge that they could possibly make a mistake. Agreed. Also been to Montana. There's a lot of open land that they could have shot it down safely over if they really wanted to. Yeah, I really don't think that is something that they wanted. They certainly weren't trying very hard. So this officially means it is Hunter's laptop. That's what it looks like. That is what it looks like, especially since they're kind of going after the owner of this shop, which is nonsense. And Casey says, let's get the little guy. Absolutely. The crime this guy committed was owning a shop called something like the Mac shop, because his name is Mac Isaac. It's actually really funny. And he repaired like Apple laptops. So fascinating. Fascinating story. I just find it so interesting. Kanya Ron says, didn't Hunter sign an agreement that the repairman gets access to the computer's data? Likely. Not sure. I have to check it out. Keenan Smith says, Independence Day. Didn't they warn the residents not to shoot the alien craft? Andy says, it's a dirty balloon. I'm not sure about that. Filled with pure, uncut Iraqi yellow cake. Thank you, dear. Bree says, guys, I'm in a negative 40s wind chill area. My windows have ice on the inside tonight. Oh my gosh, that sucks. That's really, really tough. Hopefully you guys can stay warm tonight. That's not cool. Andy, get smart. There's no yellow cake, but there is yellow cake. Yellow cake always made me a little hungry to hear about. Oh, Hunter, so nasty. He is. He is truly nasty. Abba, no. His name is A-B-B-E. That's how it's spelled. I think it's pronounced Ab. I have no idea. Not as in the band, not as in Mamma Mia. Hunter makes paintings like he's on DMT so often he can paint like Isaac from the TV show Heroes. It doesn't surprise me. Washington is incestuous. According to Chinese folklore, says Andy, if you hang a Hunter Biden painting in your house, it brings great fortune upon your family. Yeah, it makes sense that China would be openly buying Hunter Biden's pictures. Casey says, LMAO, Andy, I'm gonna buy 2. Don't. They're terrible. They're so bad. What's up, Lydia, says Johnny. What's up, Johnny? He wasn't Adolf H., a suppressed artist as well. Yeah, the problem with Hunter is that he's not suppressed. He probably should be, but he's not. Abby Normal. Yes, that is from Young Frankenstein. I recall that. That's the brain that Igor went out and got. He said it was from a lady named Abby. Abby Normal. Damaged goods is a Joe Biden trademark. Yes, for sure. Moral of the story, let them art or they go crazy. He kind of went crazy already. Isn't the joke that he failed out of art school? No, he was rejected from art school. So the joke actually is that modern art is so ridiculously terrible now because they realized that it didn't work to reject people from art school because they came up with Hitler. So they're like, okay, anyone can get in. Terrible, terrible stuff. All right, you guys, let's hop on to the next story. We got more good ones. Let's see what we got in the lineup tonight. Oh yeah, this one's really good. Latinx and other woke inclusive language has gone overboard, warn liberal pundits. It's a joke, and this is centering on, I believe, Van Jones, who mentioned it to some of his co-hosts. Terms like Latinx and are more about the agenda-setting power of affluent white leftists, one guest said. 2 liberal CNN guests admitted Thursday that they'd grown tired of terms like Latinx, arguing that supposed inclusive language is an invention of white leftists and not representative of the views of normal Americans. Yeah, 100%. When asked on CNN tonight if the left was going too far with the woke language requirements, commentator Van Jones, and this is why I was telling you guys earlier that I don't really have a bone to pick with Van Jones, even though he does work for CNN. If you guys remember, we read his really inflammatorily titled article about those 5 police officers, that they titled something along the lines of, even though all the perpetrators were black, it's still about white supremacy. But the main thrust of his article was that actually we need more accountability for police departments, and I completely agree with that. And I don't know a person of good faith who could or would disagree with that. So Van Jones can be as reasonable as is possible for a CNN host to be. Even people like myself who are passionately committed to these causes, Jones said, have become afraid to even talk on a Zoom call because you might say the wrong word. Yeah, Van, that's how it goes, and you helped set this up. Good work. It's a mistake that comes with a high price, Jones says, as people who use the wrong words may spend 15 minutes being lectured about something that nobody has even heard of 6 months ago has become required speech in polite company. Another CNN guest, New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof, said the left's invention of terms like Latinx has gone too far. I think that we should be inclusive. I think we should be prepared to think about our language and to use it in a way that it obviously doesn't humanize anybody, he said. But I do think we've gone overboard. We have, and I'm about to show you guys an example of what exactly that looks like. This is from a gentleman named Jeremiah Aoyang, whom I'd never heard of. He's the tech and business CMO of something, a network association, advisor, speaker, loves Airstreams, CrossFit, and sushi. Of course he likes CrossFit because what he's about to say is one of the most unbelievably, ridiculously insufferable things you will ever hear. I didn't even consider my language. I've used the phrases on the left too often. Too often I've used these violent terms. Terms like, we're going to pull the trigger. I'll make a stab at it. Did we jump the gun? I'll bite the bullet. That'll kill two birds with one stone. What's the deadline? We have to pick our battles. Can you shoot me an email? That was overkill. My goodness. Okay, instead of we're going to pull the trigger, say we're going to launch. Instead of I'll take a stab, say I'll take the first pass. Did we jump the gun? Did we start too soon? I'll bite the bullet. I won't avoid it any longer. That'll kill two birds with one stone. Instead, say that'll feed two birds with one stone. Now, I don't know if you guys remember this, but I think it was PETA, animal-friendly idioms. Yes, feed two birds with one scone. Is this from the Babylon Bee? No, it's not. Yeah, stop using anti-animal language. Instead of saying kill two birds with one stone, say feed two birds with one scone. Instead of be the guinea pig, be the test tube. Instead of be a dead horse, feed a fed horse. Instead of bring home the bacon, bring home the bagels, because apparently it's better to be Jewish than to be anti-animal. And instead of take the bull by the horns, say take the flower by the thorns. So this is really, wow, they've really come a long way because they're actually encouraging people to say these things. Like this tweet got 30.5 million views. It got 10.6 thousand quote tweets and only 6,000 likes. Holy cow. Really curious if he hid any responses. Doesn't look like he did. Let me see if we can find view hidden replies. He did not hide any replies. So that's braver than hiding stuff. But this is such nonsense. Bite the bullet is from, I believe, the Civil War, where they would use a bullet while they were, this is kind of grisly, but they would use a bullet to bite down on when they were amputating limbs because such was the nature of pre-anesthetic warfare. It's not good. Here's an example of one that's really, really good. Don't use this following term. That's not a bad idea. What is wrong with the term, that's not a bad idea? Now I want to know who Anna Taylor is, who wrote this. Let's find out about this too. We're just going to research it as we go. So we have Anna Taylor-Joy, who's the actress. That's definitely not it. Violent language. So we have, I want to know who she is. Well, this Anna Taylor individual would be offended, but I don't know that you should care. People think they can change reality by changing language. People do think they can change reality by changing language because to some degree they can. It's not so much that they're changing reality, it's more that they're changing our perceptions of reality by changing what we say about reality. It literally shapes how we view the world. And it's actually a really interesting phenomenon that I've talked about before that the left takes advantage of and the right doesn't seem to understand, because it's like they have grasped the idea that if you change how people talk about something, you do change how they perceive it. And this is, for whatever reason, something the right can't seem to come to terms with. Here's a question. Do you have any data showing this? That's the point. What are you talking about? You can take the violence away from our language, but you can't take the violence away from our nature. Don't overthink an ish take. Just laugh and move on. No worries, because the people at issue's brain power is not a significant factor. Let's see what some of the quote tweets are saying. They're probably not very complimentary. Everyone knows that people who use this sort of, quote, violent language invariably go on to violently attack people and animals. I'll take a stab at it while I take a shot in the dark after I'm done beating a dead horse. Hey, can you shoot me an email? Collapses and dies. I love it. Saying bad idea to me is violence. Yeah, there you go. What the apparatus claims is necessary for nonviolent or inclusive language is really just meant to slowly neuter the populace and make us easier to control. I'm kind of inclined to agree with that. Seth Dillon of the Babylon Bee says libs think saying shoot me an email is very bad, but surgical transition for minors is fine. And that's a great point. I really appreciate him making. Ben Shapiro says, I want to disembowel this chart and feed its metaphorical intestines to the ravens. I loved that. I heard him comment that on his show and I was like, perfect. Like, there's no better way to respond to this stuff than by just mocking it. And I absolutely think that's exactly what we should do because there's no way around it. It's complete nonsense. We know it is, and we should not bend to it. We should just be aware of it and make fun of it. So there you go. Take that and stick it in your pipe and smoke it. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about, I don't know, are you guys familiar with the eugenics program that went down in California? It's very interesting. Leap of logic mushed. Yes, for sure. So we're going to talk next about what California did to people without their consent because it is not pretty. Patricia says China's scoping out the territory for a little Red Dawn action, and it looks like this administration was paid well to allow it. That is kind of what it looks like to me. I don't like it. Serenko Production says Awfuls, AWFLS, affluent white female liberals. Yes, Awfuls. Planet Fatness says Lastinks. Not quite. NFTs were sold overseas, and now the market for them has crashed. Easy enough to explain. What a time we live in. I wonder if this don't believe your lying eyes mentality has always existed. It wasn't just translated by historians. Andy says, and he's a literal communist. I'm not sure who we're referring to here. CNN actually saying something sensible? Dang, yes, 100%. If you don't have a problem with Van Jones, you haven't looked into his past. I don't know much about his past. You are correct. All I know is that his takes are just slightly more reasonable than the rest of the people at CNN. We all know that CNN sets the bar like slightly under the dirt, so close to the ground. It's absolute nonsense. All I'm saying is that he's better than most people at CNN. And I don't think we can really contest that because he's much more reasonable than, for example, Don Lemon. So here's an article telling us that California is run by trash people, which most of us just say, duh, we know that already. Let's read it a little bit. Okay, it's not news that California is run by trash people, but Gavin Newsom is angling to become the Democrat candidate for president, so it is incumbent upon all of us to keep reminding people how evil his policies are. He is destroying lives, destroying neighborhoods, and would destroy our country if he got more power. He is, for all intents and purposes, evil. Evil is as evil does, and what he does is evil. So the definition of evil that we came up with over on Timcast IRL was that evil does nothing but destroy. It does not create anything good. All it does is cut down the things that it doesn't want anything to do with, and I think that's exactly what Gavin Newsom does. So I think this is a fair analysis from David Strom. Last week, I wrote a VIP column about State Senator Scott Wiener. Oh boy, we read about him the other week too, calling him the most dangerous state legislator in the country, and I completely agree. Wiener is one of the most powerful men in California, which de facto makes him one of the more powerful people in the country. Wiener and Newsom together have transformed the state of California into a haven for human trafficking, both for sex work and for transitioning children through sterilization and mutilation. California, if it were a sovereign nation, would rank as the 5th largest economy in the world, on par with Germany. It has a larger population than Canada, and 10% of the Fortune 500 companies are based there. That is crazy. In other words, it is a big deal. The American dream as a concept was born in California. New York was where people went to get wealthy, but California became the place where people went to get the good life. Sun, sand, and suburbs. These men are turning the state into a crap hole. Wow, it's a really nice way of putting that. You can read my column about Wiener, and you should. But Wiener will never have a shot at the presidency while Newsom really could. There are enough leftists in the country to get him nominated, and ironically his policies are so evil and he is so slick that enough people might dismiss critiques as hyperbole that he would get a pass. On the latter, I am not kidding. Look at how many people simply ignore the content of books such as This Book is Gay and just assume that grooming behavior is simply compassion for the oppressed class. Parents actually do take their children to drag queen shows willingly. We really do have to be relentless in focusing on the facts, and heroes like Christopher Rufo, Matt Walsh, Abigail Schreier, whose article we read last week about Scott Wiener, and Michael Schellenberger are doing an admirable job. We should emulate them, 100%. Schellenberger has a new thread on Twitter about how a new law in California pushed by Wiener and embraced by Newsom is ruining middle-class neighborhoods and condemning young girls to lives of prostitution. Jeez, I hadn't seen that one. That's from today. Billed as a law to protect transgender women, it legalized loitering for the purpose of conducting prostitution. Right? No, we did talk about that because that's the one Scott Wiener, right, introduced. That's the article that Abigail Schreier wrote. I think it's called Predator's Paradise. Prostitutes have begun trolling middle-class neighborhoods, soliciting in front of schools, and pimps are now conducting gang wars right next to families. The police are hamstrung. They can't even force the prostitutes to move along and can only do something if they catch people in the act directly, exchanging sex for money. And the rationale was simple. Some prostitutes are trans women, and allowing police to arrest prostitutes for loitering with the intent to sell their sexual services might empower police to target trans people for prosecution. In reality, the law basically empowered police to force prostitutes to move along. Prostitution was already rampant in the cities, but was constrained to smaller areas away from people. Sex work was largely decriminalized in California as it is, certainly in the Bay Area where the problem has become rampant. Jeez. There is a myth being promulgated that street prostitution is simply a form of work that some women choose to make ends meet. Nothing could be further from the truth. Rather than resembling the movie Pretty Woman, it is more akin to the sexual slavery. Pimps run the business while women do the work. The women are usually addicted to drugs and often begin as minors who ran away from home. It is a human tragedy, not a line of work. Wow, so Schellenberger really has a full thread about it. It's really interesting. Yeah, here's Scott Wiener. And who is being victimized? Not Wiener, Newsom, or their wealthy constituents. Of course not. It's never the wealthy people. Sorry, I gotta take a sip of coffee because I'm falling asleep. It's working class people and the victims of human trafficking, about whom neither Wiener nor Newsom cares one whit. They are nameless, faceless people whom they pretend to represent, while it is the whiny white woke who feel virtuous as defenders of the oppressed. There are many layers of irony here in this situation, but perhaps the cruelest is that the intended beneficiaries of the policy are victimized by it as well. It is just as likely that transgender prostitutes are being exploited by pimps and johns as the women they work next to. They too are being trafficked as sex slaves. The policies are evil and only make sense to sociopaths who care for nothing but their own political advancement. They look for social justice causes to latch onto in order to virtue signal to their constituents, victimizing people lower on the social and economic ladder. Evil is as evil does. I completely agree. Great article, David. We're now going to look at some of California's history. So really soak in this headline. Gotta catch my breath. Take a sip. This is from January 31st. A brief history of California's eugenics program, 1909 to 2013. This is insane, and I did not know anything about this, and I'm willing to bet that most of you guys didn't either. So let's look at this. After decades of forced sterilizations followed by feeble apologies, California is shifting to the endgame of its century-long sterilization program, taxing innocent citizens to pay off its victims. Wow. It is a common sense view that government spending is generally inefficient compared to spending by private people and businesses. As the Nobel Prize-winning economist Milton Friedman famously argued, nobody spends somebody else's money as carefully as he spends his own. Nobody uses somebody else's resources as carefully as he uses his own. So if you want efficient and effective, you want knowledge to be properly utilized, you have to do it through the means of private property. 100% couldn't agree more. Good work, Friedman. This point about economic efficiency may be true, but it often lets government officials off the hook far too easily. A chilling example of this is how California is currently dealing with its long history of forcing sterilization on unwilling victims and then legislatively immunizing themselves from responsibility. If you were a taxpayer in the Golden State as recently as 2010, your earnings probably helped fund the forced sterilizations of hundreds of inmates, such as a Native American woman named Moonlight Pulido. While in prison in 2005, Polito said a doctor told her he needed to remove 2 growths that might be cancer, the Associated Press reported earlier this month. She signed a form and had the surgery. Later, something didn't feel right. She was constantly sweating and not feeling like herself. She asked a nurse who told her that she had had a full hysterectomy, a procedure that removes the uterus and the cervix and sometimes other parts of the reproductive system. I felt like less than a woman, Polito told reporter Adam Beam. We're the only life givers, we're the only ones that can give life, and he stole that blessing from me. Wow, she's not wrong. Polito was not alone. Other victims of this ghoulish policy shared stories with media, including Kimberly Jeffrey, who recalled resisting a tubal ligation procedure while she was sedated and strapped to an operating table. Being treated like I was less than a human produced in me a despair, Jeffrey told NPR. Kelly Dillon, a former inmate at Central California Women's Facility, explained how she found out that her ovaries had been removed in 2001 without her knowledge or consent, after she was told surgeons were going to take a biopsy and remove a cyst. It was like my life wasn't worth anything. Somebody felt I had nothing to contribute to the point where they had to find this sneaky and diabolical way to take my ability to have children, Dillon told The Guardian in 2021. This is really sad. It was not until years later, while still a member of the California state prison system, that Dillon began to realize other inmates were receiving hysterectomies and sterilization procedures without their knowledge, often after being told the procedures were necessary to look for cancers or correct gynecological issues. If the perpetrators of these violations were held accountable for their actions, such atrocities would be less likely to happen. But instead of being brought to justice for their malfeasance, the California state government is forcing innocent people to pay the price and getting off virtually scot-free themselves. And it is this sort of application of the expropriation of funds from private and productive citizens that has allowed governments to terrorize their citizens since time immemorial, a pattern that will have no reason to end until measures have been taken to eliminate the power of governments to enact such cruel legislation. Here's the timeline. California's forced sterilization. 1909, the state government of California created a sterilization program that became the largest eugenics movement in the United States, sterilizing more than 20,000 unwilling victims and also inspiring eugenics practices in Nazi Germany. Wow, 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 wow. Yes, you heard that correctly. California inspired the Nazis. You know who else inspired the Nazis? Was Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood. This is blowing my mind. This is the kind of really interesting historical story that I love to read. Really interesting stuff. The practices were carried out in public hospitals and other tax-funded institutions for the disabled and mentally ill because people with disabilities or mental illnesses were deemed unfit for reproduction. 1927. By now, the eugenics movement had become mainstream in the United States. It was widely thought among elite American policymakers that the human population could be improved by coercively preventing the reproduction of disliked demographics such as the disabled, the poor, the feeble-minded, and even people deemed sexual deviants, such as rapists, prostitutes, or even women who had sex out of wedlock. California's constitutional right to continue its eugenics practices was enshrined by the United States Supreme Court in the Buck v. Bell case, in which the rights of the state of Virginia to sterilize Carrie Buck, whom the state falsely declared feeble-minded against her will, was upheld, and with it the rights of other state governments to make similar decisions for their inhabitants. Writing for the majority, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., considered an idol of progressivism in his time and still by some today, stated it is better for all the world if instead of waiting to execute degenerate offspring for crime or to let them starve in their imbecility, society can prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind. Holy cow. The principle that sustains compulsory vaccination is broad enough to cover cutting the fallopian tubes. Holy crap, we just came out of a pandemic. That's wild. I think I'm gonna tweet that quote because that's insane. That's insane to me. He's still considered a role model of progressivism. I can't talk. It's melting my brain. And thus he concluded in a famous line that 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. Wow. 1968 through 74. Although the eugenics movement had peaked in the 30s, California government officials oversaw continued tax-funded sterilizations into the latter half of the 20th century. For example, according to an official document released by Los Angeles County 5 years ago, apologizing for a series of sterilizations, county's officials had overseen between, 1968 and 1974. I'm trying to stay awake, guys. I really am. Over 200 women were who delivered babies at the Los Angeles County plus USC Medical Center, the majority of whom were low income and born in Mexico, were possibly coerced into getting postpartum tubal ligations. That's sterilization. At least some of the women were not aware they had been sterilized and only learned that they had lost their reproductive rights during the subsequent doctor's visits. It is significant and necessary to acknowledge the irreparable harm inflicted onto the women who are subjected to these coerced sterilizations at Los Angeles County plus USC Medical Center and to their families. So this wasn't women who were feeble-minded or who were mentally unfit or who were prostitutes. These were women who were poor. Literally women who were poor. And you wonder why Nazi Germany was taking a page out of these people's books. Absolute insanity. This is the end result of progressivism. I really think that the Nazis were just a little bit ahead of their time. In 1979, California's eugenics laws were repealed, supposedly ending the practice of state-funded eugenics in California. Oh, that's nice. That's really progressive. 1999 through 2010, California's eugenics movement was mysteriously revived, but this time under the guise of prison health care. Oh, there you go. According to the Associated Press, less than 2 years ago, sterilizations in Californian prisons appeared to date to 1999, when the state changed its policies for unknown reasons to include sterilization procedures known as tubal ligation as part of inmates' medical care. So if you go to jail, you get sterilized. Holy cow. What if you are unjustly convicted? What if you are wrongfully convicted? Crazy. Over the next decade, women reported they were coerced into this procedure, with some not fully understanding the ramifications. 2003. While the California government was still funding involuntary sterilization in their state prisons, California Governor Gray Davis apologized on behalf of the people of California for the government's past eugenic actions. I am riveted by this article. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of going to read the whole thing. To the victims and their families of this past injustice, the people of California are deeply sorry for the suffering you endured over the last years. The apology read, our hearts are heavy for the pain caused by eugenics. It is sad. It was a sad and regrettable chapter in the state's history, and it is one that must never be repeated again. 2013, the Center for Investigative Reporting discovered that between 1997 and 2010, California state officials spent at least $147,000 of taxpayer funds to sterilize 148 female inmates. The above quoted Moonlight Pulido, Kimberly Jeffrey, and Kelly Dillon were just 3 among them. Many of the records of these sterilizations were lost or destroyed, the Associated Press reports. NPR notes that the true number of illicit sterilizations during that period may have been significantly higher than reported, and that the operations appeared to be disproportionately target repeat offenders. Goodness gracious. Let me see what their conclusion is, because this just goes on forever, allowing the unthinkable to happen. Let me see what his summary is. This is so well written. This is from FEE, the Foundation for Economic Education. There are plenty of reasons one might struggle against government taxation. Perhaps you're a poor or middle-class laborer at pains to afford your children's education. Perhaps you're a visionary entrepreneur trying to fund some world-changing new technological or medical research. But at least as good a reason as any to oppose your wealth being confiscated is to prevent institutions such as California state government from spending another dime on their campaigns of terror and reproductive destruction. Wow. So I'm certainly going to include a link to this in the description of this video. I didn't do a lot of my links today because I was just being slapdash and it is Friday and we're all just chilling. But let's see what you guys are thinking about this. It is not a cheerful article. Not at all. Whew, goodness gracious. Wild. If cultural appropriation is so bad, why is gender appropriation okay? That is such a great question, because I have made the very spicy comparison between blackface and what I like to call woman face when a man pretends he's a woman, as very much as a mockery. It's always a stereotype. It's really like it's not taking it seriously. It's pretending to be something you're not. Whereas, blackface was an all-out mockery, like an imitation of somebody's physical attributes. I really think that men dressing up as women is very much the same. Well, people would see Jesus performing miracles and they still crucified him, so it's been present for a while. But the rise of subjective reality is making it more prevalent, I think. I'm not sure what that's in relation to. Planet Fatness says right out of the script of Demolition Man. And bacon is good on a bagel. Everything's so whack we don't know if it's parody. That bacon one is unkosher too, that's fair. No, it's tearing the paper cartridge to pour the powder. No, I don't think that's bite the bullet. I don't think bite the bullet is from tearing the paper cartridge to pour the powder. Well, could be either way. I'll have to look that up. My understanding was that was from when people would put it between their teeth to prevent themselves from screaming, which is kind of horrible. Bite down on the part you want to rip off, then you can pour the powder down the muzzle and turn around to load the bullet with a rod. It just depends on what time it came from. Tony says a clown will always be a clown. I agree. The parodies about progressives, says Andy, we used to see in the 90s were absolutely nothing as silly as what we see from actual modern progressives. 100%. Leap of logic much? Not sure. Boom, make fun of it. Yeah, 100%. Do nothing, just mock it. In fact, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about Seth Dillon when we had him on Timcast IRL, which we did not get around to discussing, was the importance, the absolute incredible, crucial significance of the role of satire and parody in the modern world. We absolutely need to laugh at the stuff that lefties are throwing at us because there's no other way to really give it the disrespect it deserves. I think that's the best way to go. I think that's why that looks like they memory hold PCU. Last I checked, you can't find it on. Oh, yeah. So Andy keeps talking about a show or a movie called PCU, like Politically Correct University. Last I checked, you can't find it on Prime, Hulu, Netflix, YouTube, even DVD. Copies didn't show up on Amazon. Andy says, murder that like button. That's right. Strangle the comment sections with its own intestines. Thank you. She said wiener. Hee. Yeah, so Scott Wiener is a study in whatever that word is where you look at the shape of somebody's head. It's total nonsense, I know. But he looks like Chester the Molester. He really does. And he kind of is, it turns out. Let's look at a picture of him. I'm always spelling his name wrong, but I really don't care. Yeah, so this man is an LGBTQIA+ activist, and he's big into the BDSM movement. And what can I say except that he is what he is. He's not a good person. Tony has a very nice little thing that says like, share, and subscribe. It's very fancy. Andy choosing violence tonight, 100%. Many women will vote for a Newsom because they find him attractive. That is unfortunate. He looks like he's made out of hair gel and Botox. He really reminds me. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me show you this comparison between Gavin Newsom and American Psycho. I spelled American Jamaican, which is going to be funny. Let me see if I can. Yep. Here it is. This is perfect. This is exactly what I'm talking about. He looks just like the guy from American Psycho. I don't remember that actor's name, but it's very much the rictus on his face. It's like that frozen, gross, stilted smile. It's genuinely disturbing. Yeah, American Psycho. Fascinating. That was something that I noticed, and I was like, wow, it's uncanny. It's that fake smile. It's the forced idea of like cheerful, smooth, suave, hair gelled, gross. It only took one punch on that like button, Andy. All right. Only do it once. I'm going to take that like button behind the gymnasium. Okay. All right, you guys. Lydia would look better in Rumble livestream green. I'm working on mirroring all my videos over to Rumble. This is something I've started. Andy, you started something terrible. It is, in fact, a family show. No violent language. 40% of Californians are Republican like me. That's why I say that California is not a bad place. The company Andy works with is also based in California, and California is not a lost cause. It's just something that needs a lot of work. Kanye Ron says, wow, yes, this is ghoulish. This is like a nightmare from the devil's advocate. She's a real leader of women's rights, wanted to wipe out people of a certain color. That's correct. Can you link the story? I'm putting that in the description under the video. No one ever asks Hans, are we the baddies? Hans is the guy from whatever that show is where it's like literal Nazis who finally they look at each other and they're like, are we the bad guys? And of course the answer is no. Mr. Nobody says, Andy, you need to set off a loud horn to wake her up. Yeah, honestly, I can't take a drink of coffee because I'm talking. I've been talking like 10,000 words a minute. Scott Miller says it's an old Mitchell and Webb skit. I recommend looking it up on YouTube. Yeah, Hans, are we the baddies? For sure. Nowadays, the progressives will want to sterilize conservatives. Yes, but unfortunately, we are more likely to have kids than they are, which is really interesting. Andy says he could bring more puppies. Yes, send in the puppies. She's all fresh and clean. Yeah, so I'm going to link the story in the description below. My laptop, because it was unplugged, is about to die. Your Mac will sleep soon unless plugged into a power outlet. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. Somebody said phrenology, and I don't think that's the right word. It's less about like the shape of your head and more about how somebody looks. Physiognomy, I don't know how it's pronounced. It's about, yeah, Christian Bale as Patrick Bateman. Yeah, 100%. Is it Patrick Bateman? I thought Patrick Bateman was an actor. I'm not sure. Yeah, American Psycho lookalike Gavin Newsom might actually be running for president, which is terrifying given what we just learned about California and that piece from David Stoltz over at Hot Air about evil people being in charge of California, which I 100% agree with. All right, you guys, I'm going to close it up here because my computer is going to die and it's a little after 7. So you guys enjoy the rest of your Friday night. I will see all of you on Monday. Until next time, bye guys. How's it going?